Okay, so if you wouldn't mind, just tell us a little bit about your family first. Who are the Costines? Where do they come from?
Well, we all came from Clyne, Ollie. This is not being recorded now, no.
It is?
Oh, yeah. Well, my father came from Clyne, like, and his claim to fame was he went to school with Christy Ring and all that. And a few brothers and he 2 sisters went off to America back in the early years, back in the 50s and everything. But Donald O'Cusick, the present, former Cork goalkeeper, hurling goalkeeper, he would be a second cousin. His mother would be first cousin of ours, you know. And actually his grandfather, who would have been a brother of my father, he just passed away there only about 3 months ago, yeah.
And your mum, where was she from?
My mother was one of the crews from Ferrybank, and her, well, not claim to fame, that people like that weren't really into, prophesising too much stuff, but her brother, Eddie Crew, he was on the 1948 All-Ireland hurling team, the winning team. Obviously, they only won 2, you know. So they had a big family as well, and my brother Pat went back through the family tree, but I wouldn't be able to kind of go back through it all, but you know what, it's just too.
And where did your mum and dad meet then?
Actually, I don't know. We never actually found out that, but I know they moved to London they were in London for a year or 2 before any of us was born. And then they came back and my mother got a house and some relative on the Gleeson side, I think, got a house in Atlant. So that's where we're all brought up, like, you know.
And where did you go to school then?
I went to school in Mount Costine. I was like everyone that went to school in them days. School was, I really didn't have any happy memories of school. School was very, obviously, like you heard the story, you might have 3 or 4 of us in your class were a lot more intelligent. You know, I was always into football, kicking football, night, noon and morning and everything. So as regards doing your exercise and everything, you done it really, but I would have to say, and I don't get any joy out of saying it, didn't get any enjoyment about going into school the following day and not having your homework done in Mount Sinai. I don't know about other schools, you know.
It was a tough school.
It was very tough. I don't make no apologies to people when I mention a few stories to them, like, you know, and if that's the way it was then, certainly it's not the way now, and we know all that, and that's all a good thing, obviously, but I would have to say there were hard-living times, Ollie. It wasn't very nice. We often went to school, the fear of God would be in us at home, not being able to do your homework and come in the following day, and people might say, well, sure, why couldn't you do your homework? We couldn't do it because everything was taught in Irish. You know, I didn't have any math grow on it whatsoever. I couldn't. We done it, but certainly a lot of friendships and lads we grew up with. We had a 30-year reunion there about in 2000 up in the Mount Science Centre. That was great. A lot of the lads didn't see each other. There were only 3 or 4 deceased from probably the 2 classes in 6th year, like, you know. So when you add up all that, we went to school, I think I just done 1 year in the secondary, then I done 2 years down the Tech, which I enjoyed. Like, it was a lot more freer and open, and you were more into kind of trade. I had woodwork and metalwork and all that stuff, you know.
And was that what were you, did you have something in your head that you wanted to do? Like?
No, I didn't, Ollie, no. In them days, there was a teacher down there, Mr. Good, and it was kind of a funny fact of life, like that when the lads came into the class, like, and when we were coming to the end of the 2, we only been down there for 2 years, you know. To the end of the 2 years, you know, a lot of fellas say, oh, I'm going into the glass factory, and I'm going into the glass factory, and there were very few fellas that said, I'm going off to college, you know. Money was scarce then in them days, and majority of people had big families and everything, you know, so I'm afraid none of us ever really financially never got a chance really to go through college. Looking back on it now, years afterwards, yeah, I survived and I went through a few experiences, but I would have liked to have went to college. I think a lot of people, the percentage of a lot of people would have liked to have went to college and bettered themselves and got a bit of further education, you know. But I'm afraid, like everything, it was a one-way ticket. But this lay teacher down in the Tech, he had a saying like, "Oh, sure, you're all going to the glass factory," you know. He kind of think that he was going with the run of the mill, that we all kind of lacked ambition, you know what I mean? Oh, the glass factory is there, and I can see him to this day. He put his hands on the desk and he say, yeah, you're going to the glass. Yeah, glass to look after you. You know, this type of thing. So they were funny days, but I have great happy memories of the friends I met going to school in Mount Sion, lifelong friends. And even to this day, like, there's a lot of friends I could call on and I keep in touch with.
And then before you went to the glass, did you have, what was the picture in your head of the glass? What was before you went there? Like, did you know what was going to be like? We didn't really, Ali. I think a lot of lads, before you went in, you didn't know what it looked like, you know. And I went in the 12th of August, 1970, into Johnstown. And Johnstown was a whole new ball game from, they moved from Ballytruckle in the early 50s into Johnstown. And Johnstown then, particularly, we had to go up to the blowing room for a year and get a feel of that up there, because there were no vacancies in the cutting shop, so you came down then singly or individually as spaces appeared, like, you know. And we kind of got a few fellas that came in with me. We liked up in the blowing room at the time. We probably didn't want to go when the time came, but it was kind of a written agreement. You came in to serve your time as a cutter, and that was it. We done it, like, you know. So we had to move down, and then after 1971, I think they moved out to Kilbarry, and that was then. But when you came in first, were you kind of like, were you scared, or were you excited? What was it like in?
I suppose it was just a bit of optimism about kind of seeing, particularly the way the blowing room was in Johnstown. It was a very enclosed encounter down there. It was very, if you went in and saw the system working in there, particularly in Johnstown, because they had soda section as well, which was all the old soda glasses, the old drinking glasses. Guys were moving in and out up on the platform, and you said to yourself, somebody's bound to get a stab of a hot iron or something, you know. But they didn't, because they were all on the same track every day. You'd be going in, another would be coming out, and a fella would be firing a gather over your head and everything. But I found the blowing very, very interesting, and I had great respect for the lads who done it, particularly in Johnstown, because it was a very, very hot environment compared to Kilbarry. And obviously Philly Grimes was across the road and that. And particularly even the lads, I used to be fascinated watching the lads blowing the big stuff, you know, big balls. And Bobby Mann, you had the late Nicky Brennan. And I took a particular interest in watching things, you know. Not that I ever had a go at doing it. Well, anyone goes in and have a go blowing through the iron. I mean, the thing ends up like an oversized ball, and there's an awful lot of skill involved in it. But it was hard work, you know.
What about Joe Cretzon? Did you see him in action?
Joe Cretzon, I would have seen him in action too, but then in latter years when he moved to Kilbarry, all them senior people got kind of supervisory positions, you know what I mean? So Joe then used to be teaching fellas how to stem and teaching fellas how to blow and everything. But I mean, I had to leave all that aside then and start off me trade in the cutting. But I always used to be up in the blowing room on my breaks and things like that as well, because I was being heavily involved in soccer and played a lot of squash, and used to go up to see people like Richie Poward and that, and be up there talking football non-stop and everything. I was one of them fellas, I never kind of sat down still, you know, or read the paper on me break or something like that, you know. Not me dinner break. But there were long days, you know, but the blowing was... I liked the 1 year I was there. But if someone said to me, well, would you like to stay here or go down below? At the time, you were only 16, like at the time you'd be inclined to say to yourself, I'll try to stay here. But really we couldn't, because I remember when we were 4 or 5 were brought down to starting the cutting on a particular day when the date came up and they had a vacancy. And I remember one of the supervisors in the blowing room brought us down in the yard in Johnstown to the office, and he said, they're going to make cutters out of you, like, is that right? And we kind of go, yeah. Of course, we hadn't a clue what to expect, you know, when we went in. And when we went in, then there was a man there by the name of Frank Welsh. Frank was a kind of a training instructor. He would have been a former cutter as well, but Frank would have put hundreds of people through his hands, like, and he show you how to cut, and you get blank glass, and you had to do a test, of course, and everything, you know. We done all that, and then over the course of time, then they push on a bench, When you went on the bench then, it was, normally a 6-man system. You only had a few, 12-man system was called a double bench. But you mainly had a master cutter and a first helper, and then you had 4 cutters below him. And you used to cut everything on the carb running wheel then, which meant you cut everything twice. They cut it rough, but it would leave the points a little bit short. And you had what was known then as a fine wheel, and you would the groove in that fitted into the groove into the carb running. And that's basically, so if you went up or down, you could change the heights for different types of glasses, brandy glasses, and people doing jugs and salad bowls and everything. The cuts would be a lot heavier on them and things like that. So you went in basically and done 5 years, but after about 3 or 4 years, you'd have a fair idea what you were at. But I would have to say, and I said it over the years to a lot of people, it was a piece race system, and then you had a situation where there were some guys in there. Obviously, if you put 100 fellas down and give them all a glass each, one guy would cut it quicker than another fella. One guy might cut it better than another fella, And there were people over the years. I'm still a perfectionist by nature, I suppose. But then there were people there that just went 100 miles an hour cutting the glass, and some of the quality could have been not really what it should have been. And on the other hand, you had somebody like me, and I wasn't the only one, of course, people conscientious and things like that, who would have been cutting the glass, and you would have been particular about what you were doing. Like, you could actually use the phrase, you never cut a bad glass in 23 years. I didn't anyway. So you had that kind of difference there. So obviously you got different wages then. The guys that were on the piece train were producing more. It mightn't have been what it should have been. And then the guys who were producing less but was 100% perfect. So that was the kind of a contrast you had there. That was basically the story.
Quality control was very strict. Like, if you didn't do good quality, you didn't get the money.
Yeah, well, as I said, Ollie, I mean, when you say quality, some guys were, I was unbelievably particular, like. So other guys were in there and they cut the glass and it was passable, okay. But there was still a difference between I probably could have been over particular, that type of thing. But it was a hard job. I mean, if you went in and you didn't, you put your head down like and work all day, you wouldn't get any wages. You could read a paper, sit down, talk to people, go around, do what you wanted to do. But at the end of the week, when your wages came and someone said, what did you produce? That's the way it was. Now, I won't run too far ahead if you want me to be a little bit more precise as regards all that area kind of growing up in the thing,
Yeah, no, I just want to talk a little bit about, was it difficult becoming, like, when you were starting off first, was it difficult as an apprentice? What was it like as an apprentice?
Well, an apprentice, like, actually, Jim Irish, the late Jim Irish, who played in the All-Ireland in 1963 with Waterford. Jim, I went in onto Jim's bench when I was in there first, and John Kwan, the late John Kwan, was his first helper. And they controlled everything. The master cutter distributed all the glass, and for 2 fellas to keep 4 fellas going, like, they were on the carb running wheel, we were on the fine wheel, So you basically just followed suit, like, you'd be all cutting the one glass, and you get pallets and units of them, like, could be 200 in a unit. Then you could be on bigger stuff on another day and smaller stuff and on lamps and stemware and everything. So there was a variety of everything. But everybody was in there at the time, as we were all apprentices, and we basically had one thing in our head, like, after the end of the 5 years, I'm qualified. And that was a kind of momentous kind of milestone for an occasion, Then you had to do what was known as a 5-year bowl. And the 5-year bowl was a very, I still have it actually, it was a very intricate piece of work. A lot of the cutting, all the various different types of cuts that you'd done was involved in this bowl. They had to design that way, you know what I mean? You had to cut stones, you had to cut swerves, you had to cut little scallops off the top of them going around. So you got a piece of everything that you'd done in there was actually implanted in the bowl, like, you know what I mean? The work of the bowl. So that was it.
And I mean, like, people often say that, like, even though it was all made by hand, like, the people had to become like machines. I mean, it was high pressure stuff. Like, you had to turn out huge quantities, and you had to.
Yeah. Well, see, Ollie, it was a natural reaction. Like, I mean, you were in there and it was on a piece rate system, so everybody had an incentive to kind of keep going, you know. And then you put out the units and they were gone. But over the course of a few years, you could be on a bench for 2 or 3 years and you might look for a change, or vacancies might come around. But basically, a lot of the lads that we all went in there, they basically stayed on the same bench for a few years. Like, then you might move on to another bench. But then you've actually worked your way up then, because a lot of the older senior cutters who were out there then, like I worked with a man by the name of Toddy Carey, and he was legendary kind of figure. And after, I think I was only about a year with Jim Irish, I went into a K2 area, and Toddy was one of the top cutters out there to come from Ballytruckle. Him, Paddy Hennessy, Emer O'Brien, the late Tom Dowland. Most of them are dead now, unfortunately, but they were all the senior cutters when they came in from Ballytruckle. So they all had benches. And I went up onto Toddy, but Toddy was a very unique man. He was, he had a reputation at the time being, when the Griffins had a factory and everything, all Griffin used to come down to see him at Christmas time and everything. And he was, you know, everybody cut holy water fans, and you heard of people cutting swans and all, ducks and everything. He was a very unique man, way ahead of his time. And Toddy cut a lot of stuff that we say was collector's item before it ever came into the system. Things he used cut for himself, like, and everything. But you'd be still trying to do that on a piece rate system and fit it in and everything. And it was against the kind of company's wishes. But Toddy, having given the service that he gave at the time, he was in there since 52, 53, I think, roughly. And I went in 70, so he had a fair few years under his belt. But he had a unique style of cutting the glass. He actually cut it, I won't say upside down, but instead of before, when we used to cut it over the wheel, Toddy used to actually cut it under the wheel. And he was the only one. Very few cutters were able to do it like that. But then he had a first helper, and John Welch was his name. John was only talking to John this morning before I came in. John was an excellent cutter. You'd know people's work, like, were they good, were they average, were they struggling, or were some guys way above the rest, you know. So you had all that type of thing, but there was a tremendous camaraderie out in particularly up in the Brona, but also in the cutting shop, because you just had K1, K2 and K4. K3 was kind of blank stores, and they done engraving and things like that there. Stoppering and all things for the chandelier, they were in that area, K3. But we had we were all involved in sport then, and we used to inter-department competitions, and used to Christmas nights out and social clubs and everything, you know. So I look back on it now, I've done other things afterwards, obviously, but when I look back on it now, it was, we had a fantastic relationship with each other out there, you know. It's great. I mean, a lot of fellas went on to, people like Kevin Power now went on to play for Waterford and things like that. And other guys, Ben Delaney and them, to go playing music, and, you know. But we all got on with each other. Really, you see, it was an individual thing. It didn't matter if you were on a bench here and the fellow was behind you and he was earning what he was earning, you were earning what you were earning. It was immaterial. Nobody was interfering with anybody else. It was just you were there with these 6 guys, and you lived with them, had your break with them, whatever the story was out in the canteen. So you literally went in every Monday morning, and it was all go, turn on the machine, boom, boom, boom. So then over the years, then people worked their way up. We'd say somebody would have been a first helper, and one of the older guys, then they brought in the factory in their wisdom, which I think was a very good idea at the time. I can't give you the exact year, Ollie. They brought in what was known as a special department. When they brought this in, then a lot of the senior cutters were taken off piece rate, which meant you were out of the rat race, for another word. And they brought you over to a special department where they started to make, Waterford Crystal got heavy into all sports trophies with golfing and snooker and darts. You can see them yourself even to the present day. So they set up all that industry over there, which was a special section. And the people who were over there, they didn't flood the place. You had to have a lot of years before you got a chance to go over on seniority. So obviously there was a seniority list there from start to finish. And certain people then, when their time was coming, they say, oh, the fella's retired and there's a chance I'm next over. So it was really gone into kind of a safe haven. But again, when you were over there then, I remember John Quam, over there, and Jim Irish, all the guys ahead of us were all over there before. I actually never got a chance to go. But there were other people that worked their way down along the line. They got over there then and they cut these things. So when the tourists came in, they saw a lot of what tourists wouldn't have seen 20 years earlier, And then they got onto the stage. So you had vacancies arose, and then you had the first helper then was moved up and got a bench. And then, of course, again, I haven't the exact year for you, but then they brought in diamond technology in the cotton shop. And what happened when they brought this in, because at one stage there were about, and I remember there were definitely around 700 cutters down there, 750 cutters, which was a lot of cutters, cutting a lot of glass every day. So you can imagine what was going out on the production line, going down to the acid to get dipped, and down to the blank store to get packed and everything. There was a lot of glass on the move. But when they brought in the diamond technology, you literally cut the glass. You cut the glass once. So when you cut the glass once, that's it. The glass was gone. There was no repetition of following somebody up. That just wasn't the system anymore. But what happened then, of course, was that we were cutting the glass quicker than the 300 or 400 blowers who were blowing it, or 500 blowers, whoever they were. I haven't got a number for the blowers, but I know there were about 700 cutters. So you couldn't. We were cutting it quicker than they were blowing it. So something had to give. And then the company decided in their wisdom that, look, lads, anybody want to go, and they brought in redundancies after the strike and everything, The strike left a lot of sour taste in people's mouth. The strike really was, I would only use the word, Ali, the beginning of the end.
What year was this?
Well, the strike was the strike again. Seeing I was doing this at short notice. The strike, Ali, I can't give you the exact year. It was,
okay. What was it? Good weather?
Oh, it would have been, yeah, 1980, in the 80s, yeah.
85 or something?
Yeah, something like that, yeah. You're right, around that time. Yeah. So the strike left a sour taste. There were a lot of divided families. You had certain people were on management, certain people were in other positions within the factory, and then you had blowers in the blowing room and in the cutting shop, and there were a lot of people lost friendships in there.
What was the strike about, remember?
Well, the strike, I think, basically all it was about was like everything about implementing new work practices and things like that. Of course, the union back in them days then had the stigma attached to them, militant tendency, now, I mean, people can believe that. People don't have to believe it, and we could all name the lads that run the union and everything. But everyone still had an opinion, or they had a voice, and they had choices. But the strike left a very, very sour taste. I mean, people today still don't talk to other people for various reasons. Yeah.
And how long did it last?
The strike lasted, if I'm not mistaken, I think the strike lasted about 6 weeks. Again, I could be wrong now, for a week or two. But then you had short time. The company brought in Tom Galvin and the other guy that brought him in to implement all these changes and everything. So there were a lot of tension out there, a lot of friction. There was a lot of bad feeling there because people were getting up-earthed and they just didn't like it. And they're in the argument that if we don't do it and we don't cut our cloth, the factory has gone under. So you were under that threat while you were in there, and the way things were happening, as regards having union meetings. So what kind of action? What do we do? Do you put your head in the sand and keep going, or do you kind of say, well, we have a justifiable reason for not saying that you need to go this way about it or that way about it? So those were all the things that kind of. But I was told by someone on the other side of the fence a few years after, that was a 3-year plan that was being brought in, implemented, but obviously never made public. So they orchestrated it in such a way that when they brought it in, they had to offload. So there were a lot of people then out there in cotton situations where you had the senior guys, we say, could have had their families reared, mortgages paid, they weren't under a bit of pressure, they were able to hang in there. Didn't have many years to go, of course. A lot of them went around 55. And then you had the apprentice lads who came in, could have been in 5 or 6 years, didn't have too many commitments or bills on their heads. But I was in a situation with a lot of other lads who we kind of made up the phrase afterwards. We were the meat and the sandwich. We were in there with a mortgage, 1 or 2 children, family man, this thing, and you had to kind of survive. So there were a few of us in there, and I know a few fellas who were excellent cutters, and we all had to go because the economic thing, we found ourselves gradually get into a deeper hole, deeper and deeper, and not through, just through general cost of living, and we found ourselves in a situation where we had to go. I didn't think in a million years that I'd be coming out of the factory in January 93. Didn't think so. I left in 93, yeah. And as I said, I left because it was through no fault of my own, like, you know. And a lot of, I'd say 90% of the people, you'll always get people who'd say, look, offer redundancy, bang, oh yeah, I'm going, I'll take me chances, I'm gone. But a lot of the lads left that didn't think the situation would ever arise. But then they had to offload cutters, so it's the case of whoever wants to go. There was no picking and choosing. A lot of people wanted to go, but the balance of them was the people was in the middle with about 22 years, over 20 years service. We were caught in the middle. So we had no choice.
When you were working there, and did you know where all the tourists were coming around and all that?
Yeah.
What did you think of that?
For leverage, you know. And there were a lot of, not a lot, but there were certainly a few guys that got, what was known as cutter's elbows. They could have got a bit of dermatitis, or they could have got a bit of arthritis and things like that. So there were a few individuals, a few lads who fell into that category, and unfortunately couldn't keep doing it because the thing got too sore. Like, I mean, you're cutting in big salad bowls, big lamps. There was a lot of weight on your elbows while you were cutting them on the wheel. Your elbows took the main strain, you know. You wouldn't be holding it like that because then you wouldn't have control. So when you had your elbows on the bench, on the plank of wood, you were able to control the amount of strength you use and the amount of pressure you use on the glass for various cuts and everything, you know. Cutter's elbow, yeah, it was a thing was mentioned, okay, and certainly a few cutters picked it up over the years. But you wouldn't have got it overnight, you would have got it over a long period, like, you know.
For years, yeah. And then looking back on the demise, sorry, but he has.
You know, hearing disability and that, and they were catered for as well. Yeah. Then there were a few other people out there that had, you know, no speech, and a few of them were taken on board as well. Yeah, yeah.
Just to go back to the end. I mean, you weren't working in the glass when the whole thing went belly up and all that.
No, I was gone. I left in January 93.
Okay. And what did you work at afterwards?
I came out then, you see, a lot of us that came out, as I said to you, due to the circumstances, we all came out for the same reason. I mean, you're always going to get a few fellas who are going to come out no matter, the minute someone mentions redundancy, bang, we're gone. But I'd say 95% of us came out with the thing. But I mean, you walked out the gate on that Friday evening and you walked out into the world and that was it. Didn't have anything set up, didn't have any contacts to get in anywhere, didn't have any further education, didn't have any skill-wise. So it was you came out and really it was a big whole wide world. And I can remember distinctly even coming out the door on the Friday evening, getting off the wheel and saying that's the last glass I'm cutting, and walk out the door. And there were a lot of people kind of weren't happy coming out. I thought I'd be there until the day I retired. It didn't happen due to the reasons I gave you previously, but when you came out then I just said, well, what's the best thing we can do now? And I kind of had a go. I said, you're looking, I get a taxi license. So I was driving taxis for about 2 years. And then, through a strange coincidence, driving taxis then only compared to Barry McCarthy, who was the PSV man. Barry was a gentleman. In them days then, people were driving a lot longer. Like the RCA now with the thing, the strict rules only drive about 9 hours. In them days you'd be driving a lot longer. You could be driving from 5 in the morning until or 7 in the morning until 12 o'clock that night. They were long days, but then you couldn't do them days continuously. You used to do a day on, day off, day on, day off, and everything was scaled back then, you know. So I done that for about 2 years, I think, and then if you know the factory down there in Bell Lines, you know, the Louisiana, done all the flatboard and stuff, all the stuff, American company. The guy asked me one day, he said, Billy, you tried to go down there? He said, when are you starting to build that factory? And I said, yeah. I said, I'll go down. I said, what's the story? I said, go down there. He said, I think there's get a bit of work down there. So I went down really apprehensive. I had no car. I used to cycle down from up in Hillview at the time, cycle down there. So the guy set up that factory. He set him up all over the world. His name was Ron Nino Jadlo. He was Polish-American. And I went into him, so I was really only down there, you know, going around with a wheelbarrow and a shovel and a brush, cleaning up the place and cleaning different areas and things. But it was a job that I enjoyed doing it, the kind of freedom that was attached to it, you know, and plus it was a relief from the rat race of the taxi, and at that point in time doing the taxiing. So I went down there and I done that, and I was very happy doing it. I used to go in every morning. He said, Billy, go over and clean out that room and this room. And again, being particular and being the kind of guy I was, conscientious. And you used to come in, you could eat your dinner off the floor, like when I was finished. You know, they had all the floors with special stuff on them. But I saw that being built from day one practically, with all the different contractors around the country coming in. And I think Sure Electrical got all the electrical contract of it. But I saw him putting all of that in, and all the various stages of it. All the pulp used to come in off the lorries, and they used to chop it all up, and then it all come down conveyor belt. So one thing led to another thing, and I was down at getting a lot more responsibility. This Polish man used to give me kind of special jobs to do, and I was doing all that, and I was very, very happy down there. But then it's like everything, bit of setback in life. Actually, it was coming up to September, and it was due to open around December, if I'm not mistaken. And Alice Glenn, former TD, her son, forget his first name now, he was actually the general manager of the place. So word got through to a few, just before the place was starting to open, get ready to open, they'd all done some, putting the roof on and put in all the heat and got all the machinery in from America, and all the whole thing operation blew me away, the whole thing. And I knew every bit of it, about where to go, what everything was done, the reason for this, reason for that. So all the fellas putting in the sheet and the heat, and it was an incredible plant. So the foremen came in then to different sections, and I was still kind of floating around, as we'll say, just, you know, as an individual, doing all different jobs every day, like, but it was only all kind of labour, you know. But I was never afraid of work. But he came in, he said to me, "You like a job here, Billy?" And I said to him, "Yeah, I'd like a job, yeah, just to see me out, like." And he said to me, "Go over to the company doctor." And he said, over in town. And he said, he'll just pass his formality, he said. So I went over, but got a bit of a shock when I went over, because when I done the medical, I went through all the thing, and not put into the Tyler roll and that, but you know, the Tyler roll things and all the breathing things and all that. And then it was heavy concentration of dust over there, because everything was kind of done on the heat and wood, so nothing could become kind of too dry. But obviously a lot of stuff was floating around the place. So Dr. Bulbully was a doctor, and he discovered that he thought I had a bit of a bit of an asthmatic. Now I was cycling down there, cycling back, I was playing ball, I was training, I was playing squash. Sean Kelly wouldn't have caught me at the time, but he discovered that I had a malignant Meliona thing, little 3 little dots on me back. And when I went out to the hospital outside, they were malignant, and I got a lucky break. But on account of the chest episode, according to him, of course, they'd kind of put the markers on it, and I lost out on the job. Never got it. But as they say in life, one door closed and another opens. Oh yeah, sorry, that was 23 years ago, roughly. So then I went back driving taxis for about a year or two, about a year and a half, and then I got a job out in Cromford and Schubert out there. So they had a late shift they brought in. And one of the guys who I went in there with, were four of us taken on for just a night shift. It was every night you went in when the workers were gone, you were there on the following morning. Was John Hayes. John is doing the special branch, John doing the special wooden thing. So John and myself became great friends with John. We were doing that for about I was doing it for about 6 months, and then I said I might get a bus licence. So I had to make plans to make a bus licence. Didn't know what the story was up in bus air and was ever going to get in, or just done it, and that was a harrowing experience when you only drove a car, and then especially doing it up in Kilkenny, going back, 22 years ago up in Kilkenny, you'd be saying to yourself, kind of, the streets were narrow. Then we used to come down. We came down to hear them, and the driving instructor brought us around. He brought us down Michael Street in the bus and everything. It was really crazy. So one or two things kind of bounced in my favour. Then they didn't take you on in one go. They used to take you on for about 3 months, replace you for holidays, come back in and leave you back out again. So came to the crunch one day. I can remember it was only yesterday. Someone said to me over in Bus Air, listen, you want to go back over and have a go this season if one or two people might retire or whatever, or fall out of the line that you might get in, so Paul Gallagher was the manager out in Cromford and Schubert, and Paul was a gentleman. So I said, what do you want to do, Billy? Do you want to stay here on this kind of night shift, which was kind of indefinite, or do you want to go over and take your chances? And I remember at the time I said, I'll take my chances. So that's basically how I got back in over there then, and didn't look back from there. But I consider Ali everything. Consider myself very lucky in that aspect of my life as regards employment, and then I just retired there in March,
But now looking out on the outside, looking at the glass factory now, I mean, what do you think about the fact that, at one time it employed nearly 3,500 people between Waterford and Dungarvan?
Yeah, Dungarvan as well, yeah.
What do you think about all that now?
Well, I think like everyone else, you think back with fondness, and you think back of, I think a lot of people had, looking back on it now, had a lot of, particularly in the two craft sections, taking that away from people that dipped the glass and cleaned the glass and marked the glass. Everybody done what they had to do. But I think we all had a certain amount of pride, I'd say would be the right word to use, irrespective of how much you earned or what you earned, Like a lot of people, I see them, unfortunately, a few deceased lads passed away, and you might see them at a funeral, they might say, well, what do you think you've been out there, what was it like, and all that, So I think, there was tremendous comrademanship, particularly in the blowing room. Everybody knew everybody. But the same in the cutting shop. We all kind of, even though we're in 3 different sections, K1, K2 and K4, we all kind of intertwined and mingled, and I played with the glass then for a few years. I played with a lot of other clubs. I suppose fellas often say to me, you had more clubs than Jack Nicklaus, but there were great times when you look back on it. They'll never be back again, and they were gone, and all the summers we had playing the factory league, into the apartments, social nights out, particularly at Christmas then. They were real social nights out. And then, of course, the big one was when we got your holidays in the factory. And that particular day, then everybody finished up 12 o'clock and down to Egan's. Down to Egan's was the main pub to go to then, and it was a case then of how much can you drink before you fall down,
Was that Thursday evening, or was that?
It varied, Ali. Some days, you could take you might get if you didn't come in for the following day, there wouldn't be a steward's inquiry into the thing, But a lot of people were down there, and you had a few drinks, and then you had another few. I think there were I think I'd be safe to say there were very few people on the day of the holidays that, when they went in for a drink, came out a bit early. I wouldn't think so. If they're honest with themselves, I don't think so.
Because the factory used to close down.
Well, the factory was closed down then. Well, they did have to keep a skeleton staff in there to keep the furnaces. The furnaces were never allowed to go down completely because they went down to get them up again and everything. And that was one of the reasons with the strike too, which divided a lot of the workers, in the sense that where people went in and management pushed out the story that they were being brought in to kind of keep the furnaces ticking over. Otherwise, if it goes down, we're all gone. But that was my opinion, and what I heard afterwards, that was anything but the case,
That's fantastic. But just before we finish, maybe just to get, I'm going to put the piece in your hand and maybe talk a little bit about it.
Make sure you're holding it, Ollie.
Yeah, honest, don't worry about it. There you go.
Right.
So,
I don't want to think this is your life now, you know what I mean? This is your life.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about it. Just
am I putting this, is this too forward, am I making it too much of an issue about
how
it?
you cut it, because people wouldn't have a clue about, sorry, is this, or it's quite heavy. It's really heavy.
Oh, it's very heavy, yeah.
You wouldn't have it up like this.
I bet
That's perfect. Yeah, that's great.
we keep the thing on it, yeah.
Yeah, so just tell us a little bit about how.
Yeah, well, basically, Ollie, is regards the blank plate, and the other three or four lads, will tell you the way we used to do it is that you got it totally blank, right? So the blueprint that Toddy Carey had, you could put it on the back of the plate, okay, right? But all the individual cuts here, like you can see, I'm at the back because this is where it's cut from the back. You're looking at it from the front, obviously. All those little pieces were all done individually. So things like that with the blueprint, you'd have to really divide that up into sections. And up here, place like this, that'd be all done kind of freehand, Then you had to put a ring, a bar around the whole side of it, and even on top here with these kind of olives, as we used to call them. But this was a very heavy piece, and you have to hold it up, but you couldn't really, there was no room for error. I mean, if you went through Hatton, or even the stone here in the middle, which was, it's fantastic to see when it's done, and but even all the pints, everything, any kind of mistake on it as such, the ordinary guy in the street, you get away with it, you mightn't cop it. But with our kind of trained eye on the thing we used, you had to be you just had to do it right, really. But you were no rush. No one said you had to do it tomorrow morning or finish it the week after. You could spend 6 months doing it if you wanted, And then the rosettes in it here and that. And then the intertwining thing here, of course, was the whole key to the whole lot. If you can see the where it's intertwined, you know what I mean? That in itself is really what it's all about. The fact that this man was a genius, But he was still on the production as well, so he could never go off and kind of just do his own thing. But there were occasions where people cut, you often heard of people cutting holy water fans and things like that, We done things on the quiet, which you shouldn't have been doing. But then again, with 700 cutters, one or two foremen going around couldn't be everywhere,
So you were allowed to take this out yourself. There was no hassle with that. Was
No. But you kept it within the job until you were finished it, of course, And then you brought it down to get it washed and cleaned and dipped in the acid and get it packed and everything. So when you brought it home, that was it. But there's
and you're the intertwining of the.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of a Celtic cross idea, isn't it?
It is Celtic cross
so
idea,
yeah. It's not. I mean, the Star of David doesn't have that, does it?
Well, it has, if I'm not mistaken, Ali. I think it has the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you see the Star of David, it's the same. It's the same star on it.
Absolutely. But that whole thing out,
intertwining, yeah.
that's very much a Celtic. That's
a Celtic design. Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting to mix the two together.
Exactly. It is mixed. The two are mixed together. Yeah. I mean, you could have done the Star of David, which would be just plain and simple.
Absolutely.
You do it, but this way, you see yourself. It looks a lot.
Yeah.
It looks a lot better. Nice job.
So he was obviously an interesting designer, your man, John.
Toddy, he was sure. We knew like when we went in there because he had the name. The other senior cutters that were in there were more, we say, focused on production because it was piece rate again. They were in there trying to make a wage, boom. But Toddy was one of them guys that he was on production as well, of course. He couldn't just start making bits and pieces all day because we'd be all waiting for him to cut the glass before we'd follow him up and cut the glass. And John Welsh, the first helper, John couldn't keep 4 of us going either. So Toddy had to do his bit. But sometimes if he got ahead of you, when I say ahead of you, then of course how fast were you cutting it? Or you could have a fella out of work and you might take out a piece out of the drawer, then he could be fiddling around on some type of a thing. He was always kind of experimenting, and he done a fantastic clock out there. I can remember it to this day. There were actually the stems at the end of the glasses. When the glass would be broke, he grind down the foot on it, the round foot. He ground down that square, and he put a design on that, and then he made this fantastic clock where he had, we say, 50 or 60 of these, feet of the glasses, and he put them all onto this board together, and then he got a glass clock and put it in the middle of it. And I think he made about 2 of them. Where they are now, I couldn't tell you.
Right, so he sounds like a craftsman.
He was way ahead of his time, but I don't think. He did get a chance to go to the special department because he was well up on the seniority thing, But he was a very. He died a little bit young too. I mean, and I'm out in Ballinasha. I go over and just have a look at his grave and that. And can't think exactly what age he was then when he passed away, but he was way ahead of his time, And then he used to smoke a pipe. But Mr. Griffin used to come down to see him, and being on the bench that he was and being the kind of unique fella that he was, a lot of the tour guys, we'd be one of the benches that they'd always kind of come in on, And he'd be working away, and he was a small man, small in stature. And he used to have, we used to stand up on these little small wooden pallets, to get our own height, so but Toddy used the 2 pallets and he'd be standing up and I can see him to this day, and it was he was a unique man, yeah. But the challenge was there, so we took it on, the 3 of us took it on after he downed the initial one. But he didn't have any say about, hey lads, are you going to do that? And we kind of took it off our own back to do it. I know John, the first helper, John Welsh, done it before me, and I think Jerry Kennedy done it after John, and I done it after Jerry, if I'm not mistaken.
It was a bit like your bar mitzvah, is it?
What's that, Ollie?
It was like your bar mitzvah. I said, like your qualification for on the day.
Yeah. Welsh was really, I mean, of all the pieces I cut, was definitely the best piece I ever done. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, thanks very much. That was brilliant.
We cutting it off, are we okay?
Thank you.
It was grand.
Thanks very much.
No bother, Ali, bye.
That was great.
Yep.